This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on Wednesday evening, November 23rd, 2022. I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets. We have new episodes each day, Monday through Friday. If you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you're listening on a podcast source, please give the show a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, please give this episode a big thumbs up. It helps the channel out and it helps other Jets fans find the podcast. We are here with this special Wednesday bonus episode, our second episode of the day, because Robert Saleh made a major announcement on Wednesday afternoon, and that is Mike White will start at quarterback on Sunday for the Jets. Zach Wilson is heading for the bench. In fact, Zach Wilson will be inactive Sunday. Mike White gets the start. Joe Flacco will be active as the number 2 quarterback. A big change for the Jets. I'll be honest, a change that I'm a little surprised by. Even on Monday, when Robert Saleh neglected to name his starting quarterback and did not commit to Zach Wilson, I thought that was kind of a warning shot to Zach Wilson because Zach had played so poorly on Sunday against New England, and there was all that controversy with his comments post-game that kind of frustrated some people in the locker room. I thought maybe the Jets were putting Zach Wilson on notice. No, they're making a change. And Mike White will be the starting quarterback as the Jets face the Bears on Sunday. Now, you could disagree with this decision. I've been saying for days, I think you could make a case that any of the 3 quarterbacks gives the Jets the best chance to win. I think that if I had to choose somebody, I might still think Zach has a slight edge over Mike White and Joe Flacco. I don't think the difference is that great. You could disagree with the decision. You could say they should have started Zach. You could say they should have started Flacco. But one thing I really respect and one thing I really like about this is it's a clear message that there is accountability within the New York Jets organization these days. And that's something that's been a complaint for me for over a decade because I can't tell you how many times I've looked at something and some player's been favored over another player. It's had something to do with draft position. It's had something to do with a contract. And on some level, this always exists in the NFL. You're going to give guys more chances, some guys more chances than others based on their salary, based on their draft position. Because if you're a GM and you give out big resources to get a player, you don't want to admit you're wrong. So there's always an element of this, but I have to say I'm impressed that the Jets are holding some accountability here. I don't know that Zach Wilson needed to go to the bench, but I love the fact that second overall pick, quarterback. Most teams, they hand you everything. Jets are not handing Zach Wilson this job after he's played poorly. The Jets are showing you that no matter who you are, there are consequences for poor play. And I think that's something that sends a really positive message in the organization. Even if you disagree with it, you can at least see the positivity of this message. Now, there are things we don't know that factored into this decision, so it's difficult to really comment whether or not it's the right move. For example, what's the status of things in the locker room right now? Now, we know that there's some issue, and Saleh even admitted that Zach Wilson has some work to do in the locker room because of his comments where he said, he did not feel like he let the defense down. And, as much as we try and turn these things in the NFL into these enormous, these complex issues, it's really kind of common sense. You can really even reduce it down to your own life. If you work for a company that's failing and you're part of a division that's doing its job really well and maybe another division not doing so well, there's going to be some degree of division. There's going to be some degree of dissension within your company. We don't know whether Zach Wilson's really lost the locker room. We don't know how much work he has to do. We know that there's some problem. And, the New York media is going to always blow things out of proportion, so you can't really trust what you hear in the papers. The Jets are going to try and claim that nothing's wrong. You can't really believe them either because they have an incentive to make it seem like everything's okay. But you know that there's something going on. There's enough here that you can see that there's something going on. We don't know how bad it is. We don't know whether this was a move that Saleh had to make because the locker room was just frustrated or whether, this is more fixable over a short stretch. So that's one thing you don't know. Another thing Saleh alluded to is we don't know how true this is. We don't know what played into the decision ultimately. But Saleh also said, Zach Wilson could probably just use a break. And that's natural too. I mean, this is a tough market to play in. When you are failing, you hear about it nonstop. So there's some logic to this move from the standpoint. You give Zach Wilson a little mental break. And Saleh has indicated he expects Zach Wilson to be back in the lineup later this season. Now, we'll find out whether that's actually true or not. And of course, Mike White's going to have something to do with that. And as we continue on this special Wednesday bonus episode of Locked On Jets, we'll talk about where things go from here. Can we expect Mike White to keep the quarterback position? I'll tell you what I think here on this Wednesday bonus Locked On Jets episode. And this show is sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online. I think we've all learned the last couple of years how important it is to take care of your mental health. There are many different ways you can do it. Some people try meditation, some people try exercise, some people just like talking to a friend. But therapy can be a great option as well. It helps you learn coping skills, self-empowerment. It helps you deal with trauma. It really helps you benefit. Everyone deserves to feel their best, and BetterHelp makes it easier to get started. As the world's largest online therapy service, they have matched millions of people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists online, available 100%. All of the benefits of in-person therapy, plus it's more convenient, more accessible, and more affordable. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist, and if things are not clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist anytime. It could not be simpler. There are no waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapists. Get unstuck with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. When the Jets were looking to fill their quarterback position today, they just looked to Mike White. It's not so easy if you're running a business and you need to hire somebody. And that's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. It can feel like just as important as the Jets changing quarterbacks. And you want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's easy to post a free job on LinkedIn Jobs, then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. This is why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. This is a special bonus edition of the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Wednesday evening, the night before Thanksgiving. I hope if you're traveling tonight or tomorrow, you stay safe. I hope you have a wonderful meal if you're meeting friends and loved ones. And the Jets will have a new quarterback when you watch them Sunday afternoon against the Chicago Bears. Mike White steps into the starting lineup. I see the logic behind the move from a couple of aspects. Now, again, this is something we don't know, but it seems like Mike White's been impressing them in practice because a few weeks ago, the Jets promoted him. It was very quiet. It kind of flew under the radar. But beginning in the home game against New England, so the one, a couple weeks before the bye, and then against Buffalo, and again in the rematch against New England, Mike White was active as the number 2 quarterback, whereas Joe Flacco had been the number 2 quarterback prior to that. So Mike White got promoted. So it feels like Mike White was kind of impressing them a little bit. So he steps into the lineup. The other reason I see the logic behind it, and again, like I don't know if it's the right decision or the wrong decision, but here are the things that make me see the logic behind it. The fact you're playing the Chicago Bears. Because if you're thinking about making a change, this is probably the week to do it. Because this is an easier matchup than you're going to have in the weeks ahead. The Bears defense is really struggling. Their defensive line's not playing very well. In fact, tomorrow on Thanksgiving, we're actually going to have a real episode with, we're going to do our crossover show with Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears. He'll tell us all about the Bears defensive struggles. So if you're trying to ease a new quarterback into the lineup, this is the week to do it. You don't want to wait another week, because then you'll have a tougher assignment. And also, this is a game the Jets really need to win. The Jets don't really have the luxury of sitting around waiting to find out whether Zach Wilson's going to play well or not. Jets need to win this game this week. So all of these things add up. If this is the week you're going to make a change, it's logical. And I guess that's why they ended up going with Mike White. Now, let's be honest, and I think you know this. Are you expecting Mike White to take over and be the franchise quarterback of the Jets? No. Are you expecting him to play the rest of the season? Probably not. And listen, I want to be careful here because, look, I did not think Mike White could do what he did last year against the Cincinnati Bengals. I completely wrote him off. So I will not do that again. I will not make the same mistake again. Maybe he has a big game in them this week. I mean, this is a favorable matchup. Again, I think there's a logic behind putting him in this week when you have an opponent that's not so great defensively. But, long run, is Mike White going to be the guy even, for the next, 6 weeks? I don't think so. I think it's going to be a situation where, there's an old Parcells cliche. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have a quarterback. Well, some teams don't have a quarterback. Right now, the Jets have 3 quarterbacks, and I don't know that they have a quarterback, but they don't need to get a lot out of their quarterback. So I don't think any of these guys is good enough to give you 6, 7 straight games of good football. But maybe you can get one out of each of them and just play the hot hands. And maybe we'll see Joe Flacco again. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Zach Wilson again at some point this season. Again, Saleh said as much as anything, they just want him to get his mind straight. And listen, this is not good for Zach Wilson. I don't think his Jets career is over, but some people are saying there's no coming back from this. Well, there are plenty of quarterbacks who have come back from being benched. But it's not a good thing for him because it shows that the organization is now not 100% behind him. It shows the organization is not completely 100% confident in him. You could say whatever you want. This is an important game for the Jets. They're not playing their second-year quarterback, who they drafted second overall last year, because they think somebody else gives them a better chance to win. No matter what the circumstances are, no matter what your slump is, that's not a favorable sign for Zach Wilson. I don't think his career's over. I think he could get another chance later in the season. So he just needs to stay ready, stay focused, and I think the Jets are just going to have to try and patch their way through this thing with the quarterback situation. It is what it is. They didn't do a good enough job. Listen, I was the biggest complainer in the offseason that they were not doing enough to add quality quarterback depth, in part because I was afraid of injury, but in part you needed somebody who could step in if Zach Wilson wasn't good enough. And here we are, so they'll just have to make do, and they'll have to try and figure it out. Fortunately, the defense is great this year, so they don't need a lot out of the quarterback position. They just need more than they've gotten. And hopefully Mike White can give it to them Sunday and for as many games as he plays going forward. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. We have new episodes each day, Monday through Friday, along with some bonus episodes. If you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. Again, if you're listening on a podcast source, please give a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, please give this episode a big thumbs up. These things help out the channel and help other Jets fans find the podcast. Happy Thanksgiving. Again, please stay safe if you're traveling. Enjoy your meal tomorrow. And I'll be back tomorrow with Lauren Cox for a special Thanksgiving episode of Crossover Thursday. We'll preview Jets Bears.